Welcome to the Homeschool for the Win podcast, the podcast for homeschool families looking for real conversations, practical insights, and a fresh perspective on homeschooling. Hosted by homeschool consultant and homeschool mom Jeanette McBee and Jose Lopez, a college and career readiness coach who works exclusively with homeschool families. In this podcast, we dive into the latest homeschooling trends, educational choices, and ways to help students discover their passions and future paths, all while building a supportive homeschool community. Whether you're just getting started or been homeschooling for years, join us on Homeschool for the Win and be a part of the conversation that informs, encourages, and inspires your homeschool adventure. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Homeschool for the Win. We're super excited for you to be here. My name is Jose Lopez.
And I'm Jeanette McBee with Homeschool Help with Jeanette.
And we have an amazing guest with us today. And before we jump right into introducing our guest, I just want to give a little tease on why we decided to ask our guest to be here. So when we talk about homeschooling, the immediate thing that I think of is, what curriculum are we supposed to do? What extracurricular activities can we do? How can we socialize our kids? But there's something else out there that we may not see, and it's an external force of who is advocating for homeschool families out there, and that we may not even know it. And so for us, Jeanette and myself, we're from Iowa, and so we want to know who are those people that are advocating for us and who are those people that are our biggest cheerleaders. And so we wanted to invite Jeremy Voss to our podcast. Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here. I appreciate the invitation very much.
Yeah, we're excited just to learn as much as we can about what's happening in our state, what's happening in education, and just ton of information that you can provide for us. So, and for our listeners out there who don't know who Jeremy is, Jeremy serves as a lobbyist and Director of Advocacy for Homeschool Iowa and defending parental rights in education at the Iowa State Capitol. He owns Exit Factor of Des Moines, helping entrepreneurs build value and plan their business exits. And when he's not in the halls of legislature or working with business owners, he's living out his convictions as a husband, father, and homeschooler. Again, Jeremy, hey, welcome again, and we're just excited that you're here.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
And before we get started, we want to do what our segment we call Homeschool for the Win check-in. And in this segment, we just want to get personal so that we all learn about each other. And so we're just going to ask a quick question. And so, Jeanette, I'll hand it to you. What's our question for this episode?
Yes. So since we have Jeremy Voss on here, I thought I would ask a question a little bit geared more towards homeschool dads. We do know that homeschooling is a partnership. It's a wonderful partnership, and we're so thankful for it. So with that, how do you think about encouraging your wife during the day? What does that look like for you?
I love that reaction.
I guess it wasn't supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to. I'm just thinking, I'm like, okay, I know she's going to watch this. So I
hope so. I hope she's cheering on.
That's a great question. Honestly, that's changed a lot in the past 14 years that we've been homeschooling. So some pieces of it have changed, pieces of it haven't changed. So, when we first started homeschooling, I was one of three owners in a very, very fast growing, demanding company. And so I had a lot, I just worked a lot. I worked all the time, and I'm sure a lot of homeschool dads can relate to that. Wow. And partially we do, because we're built, that's what men are built to do. So in that time and in the early phases of homeschooling, I think my support day in and day out needed to look like just talking through stuff I had no idea about, the curriculum selection, are we doing this right? Am I doing this right? Are we going to screw these kids up? Right? I mean, that's a real question.
Yeah. Yes.
Especially when your frame of reference is, it's the government's, the government is the arbiter of education. right? So you think, am I doing it right when you first start homeschooling? But we'll get, I'm sure we'll get into that later. Because I have opinions. But as you are, so that was early on, like just being there to like support in that. Are we doing this right? Are we making these decisions? It's like, I'm not qualified to answer any questions about curriculum. At least I didn't think so. I didn't feel that way. But we talk it through together, and we deal with the things that are coming up, and just those things that need to be talked through and dealt with. As those things kind of subsided, our children grew. We had a relative degree of confidence that they weren't going to be messed up. And my work then changed as well. I had about a 10-year stretch where I did a lot of travel, both internationally and all over the United States. And what came from that was carving out Friday mornings when we could go out for breakfast, just the two of us. I would usually get back from a trip on Thursday night, and so Friday morning we could leave. By that time we had an old enough child at home where we could be gone for a couple of hours, and yes, they're going to watch TV for a couple hours on Friday morning. Fine, no problem. As long as everybody's everybody stays in their corner, everybody's alive, it'll be fine. But I think in that time, a large part of my support, what my support was, again, keeping that routine, making that routine happen, and just really leaning into talking about what was going on, what had gone on during the week. That was like her first, a lot of times that was her first adult conversation since I left early Monday morning. And that was really, really important. And I don't mean to overstate my importance in this. I just feel like that was a part of my role, right?
No, not at all.
And so now I think what it's turning into now, because we now have one left at home that we're homeschooling. We have two that are grown out of the house, one that's done with high school and is in an internship. And we have a little 18-month-old grandson as well, which is the absolute best thing ever. So what I think it looks like now is more of for her. I think it's more of like how does she lean into starting to kind of become the she's gonna be mad at me, but that's fine. Kind of in the groups, the homeschool groups, we've got a young, we're relatively old for to have a 12-year-old, and so she's kind of becoming the matriarch in a way of that group that she's in, and it's a wonderful blessing. It's a blessing for her. It's a blessing for the younger moms, and so just being cognizant of that and supporting that and being aware of that. Of where she needs to go and where her gifts are best utilized in moving into this next season of life. So I don't know if that's a longer or shorter answer than you normally get. But
that's good. I mean, I love this question that you've given us, Jeanette, because I mean, I think that stands for all
it's a great question.
Homeschool dads, is really that, like you, Jeremy, I'm not in the house the entire time. And so it's hard. Sometimes I forget about that. Oh, you are with our 11 and 8-year-old for the entire day. And so when I come home and I'm like, oh, it makes sense that you want me to go take the kids to the park for a couple hours. Oh, that makes sense because you have done everything with them. And so I think being just open to whatever type of support, just like, hey, can I take them for 2 hours, or can I or if there's a day where we're dropping them both out at a same activity, can we go get coffee, or what is it that really can support and just kind of help you with that? I 100% agree.
Yep.
I love your guys' answers. I think those are wonderful. I know my husband has done the same thing. Like, what I'm hearing is open communication, thinking about the context that your wife has been in for the day or the week, and how you guys can support them in that. It's just so helpful because I know women look at, what is our support system. Sometimes we don't look at our husbands should be the first line of that support system.
Mhm.
So thank you guys so much for sharing. This really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah, I think it's just awesome to just show that it's real, that, we are homeschool parents, and that we are going through, hopefully, the same thing that our listeners are going through as
Yeah.
well. So, but Jeremy, we asked you to be here so we can ask you some questions and know a little bit more about you. And our first question for you is, for listeners who may not know, what does a homeschool lobbyist do, and what does your work look like day to day at the Capitol?
Yeah. So actually, that's a question that I do answer a lot, and it's great. I like to answer the question because honestly, before I started doing this, I had no idea. Right? The Capitol was a black box to me. You throw some stuff at it, and for me it was, well, it can be really frustrating because you see things happen there that you don't like, right? That we don't like, that we know isn't biblical and isn't God honoring, and so there's a lot of frustration around it. What the best way I can describe how a lobbyist works? Well, let me before I do that, let me say there are mainly two different types of lobbyists that function in our political system, and honestly, there's a lot of bad associations with the word lobbyist, right? We oftentimes think of people that are handing out cash and having influence that's undue, but the reality is that our legislators don't have the ability to be subject matter experts on all of the things that they're being called on to make decisions about. So I think there were a little over 2,000 bills that have already been proposed in the Iowa legislature this year alone, right? And they range from everything from homeschooling to an NFL stadium and all these other things that the government needs to or has to deal with. And so lobbyists as a whole, in large part, function as the subject matter experts for the legislators. Now, we all have our own perspective on reality, right? So the lobbyist on the other side of me, philosophically, is going to answer a question very differently than how I will. But still, lobbyists function as subject matter experts for legislators, and I've had that happen. I have that happen almost weekly during the legislative session, where I will get a call or text from a legislator that says, "Hey, what does this mean? What's the difference between CPI and competent private instruction and independent private instruction?" That's a very, very normal thing. So big picture, a lobbyist really has a lot of a function of being a subject matter expert on the whatever it is that they represent. Now, there are also lobbyists on the commercial side, right? So lobbyists that represent commercial interests, and then there are lobbyists that represent ideological interests. There are a few lobbyists that do both. That's pretty rare, but there are a couple of guys out there that do both the ideological side of an issue and then also the commercial side of other issues. So, but those are two fairly different functions, because in one case you're serving to advance a cause based on financial gain. Not that that's bad. I think those lobbyists are necessary as well, but they function at a different level or a different place than someone who's an ideological lobbyist. And so obviously the homeschool side is the ideological side, right? It's not a commercial venture whatsoever. And in fact, that's one of the major challenges that we face, is that what we're advocating for is we're actually advocating for a very difficult concept for a government to understand. So most other people that are out there advocating are advocating for, they want the government to do something for them. They want something out of the government. They want something, and they want something functionally for the government. And it's difficult for a lot of legislators to understand that what we're asking is to be, we don't want anything from you. We don't want anything. In fact, we don't want to have any contact with you at all. A lot, not all, right? And there's nuance to this, but on balance, it's a little bit of a difficult concept because because your average legislator is accustomed to hearing about the things that people want to do for them, and they want to be responsible, and they want to have control, and they want to be able to put their fingers on what's going on, and that's not how homeschool law in Iowa is written, and that's really not the big picture goal for home education. Is not it. It's to be independent from that system, from that education system. Not everyone starting out from that place, but most people are. So now I'm going to answer your question. What a day looks like as a lobbyist is a lot of standing around and talking with other lobbyists and waiting for a particular legislator or legislators to pop out of a committee meeting to move, when they're moving between one place or another. We also oftentimes will set up meetings by text, right? You get people's personal phone numbers, and that's by far the best way to communicate in the modern sense as far as putting people together. But a lot of it is still waiting. It's just waiting for them to be available, and that's. In the United States, the word lobbyist comes from, it comes from post-Civil War. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, but so after the Civil War, General Grant was tired. He was elected, right, as president shortly after the Civil War, and he was tired, and I
can imagine why.
Yeah, right. And there was a hotel. I can't remember the name of the hotel, but there was a hotel just down the street from the White House. And so he would have his cabinet meetings in the morning. And then as soon as he could get out of those meetings, he would head down to the lobby of the hotel and have whiskey and cigars. And that's how he preferred to spend the rest of his day. He was a huge cigar smoker, by the way. Grant, if you ever get the chance to read the biographies on Grant, he's a fascinating guy. But anyway, that was his vice of choice, was whiskey and cigars in the lobby of this hotel. And it didn't take long for people to realize that if they wanted to talk to the president, all they had to do was hang out in the lobby of the hotel and buy him whiskey and cigars. And so that's kind of where lobbying started. The word lobbying actually comes from, it was back in England, but in the United States, that's really where it started, was waiting in the lobby to talk to somebody of influence. And that's where the word lobbyist comes from. So, so that's a big piece of it. There's a lot of waiting, but you also have to be paying attention to what's going on, what's being proposed, the legislation that's being proposed, because you have to have that basis, that knowledge of what's going on at the time to know who you're waiting for and who you need to talk to. Sometimes serendipity just drops the right person in your lap, but oftentimes it's a matter of knowing who you need to talk to as far as who is running a particular bill. If you're in favor of or against a particular bill, you want to understand who the players are in that bill and where it's going, right? So maybe you can't stop it today from the subcommittee. Maybe the subcommittee is going to pass it no matter what. But you can start planting the seeds for an amendment that will negate the things that you don't want in that bill when it hits the floor of the House or when it hits the floor of the Senate. You can start talking to the chairman of the committee that the sub is going to pass it up to. There's just a lot of different directions that you can go. So as much of it as is standing around in the lobby, but you have to do your homework ahead of time to know who it is that you're actually trying to talk to. We always try to talk to our friendly lobbyists, because friendly lobbyists who are rowing in the same direction, we're always watching out for each other's interests. And so, you walk in there and you'll see someone who's a friendly lobbyist and be like, hey, did you see this that I think might affect you? Or so it's a lot of conversations like that, but they're targeted conversations based on what's going on. In Iowa in particular, there are several days of the week that are hotter than others for action like that. So Tuesday, Wednesday, typically in Iowa, are the busiest days. By midday Thursday, everybody wants to go home for the weekend, right? And Fridays typically is a gavel in, gavel out. There's not much going on Fridays. So it depends it depends by the week, but usually it's two pretty good solid days where you push. And then there's the odd times where that committee meeting goes until 8 or 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. And so sometimes you're involved with things like that as well. But I think that's pretty fair. And to be clear, this is definitely not a full-time, for me, this is not a full-time gig, right? So Iowa's legislature meets the first 100 days of the year. So they stop getting paid this year on April 21. If they're done with their work, great. If not, they still have to finish their work and they just don't get paid. So another reason to like Iowa.
Yeah.
Well, I love what you're saying. I mean, that's what we in Iowa need, is a subject matter expert. Especially there's a lot of things here in Iowa that I see online that people are just confused about, and so it's really cool to see how we have someone out there who is doing the homework, who is advocating for those homeschool families. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that it does require some homework and some studying and understanding where the climate is of education, and it's not just talking and rubbing elbows. It's about the whole picture.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at this current legislation and just the overall direction of where things are going this year, what are some issues that homeschool families really need to be aware of right now? That I know for me, sometimes, like, I want to be a part of the conversation, but I don't know all the pieces that are coming together either. And it's hard to get kind of a summary of what all is happening and what do I need to be praying about, and what do I need to be thinking about, and who do I need to contact. So I guess the first part is, like, what is happening right now that we really need to be aware of?
Yeah. So I'm going to do a little plug for Homeschool Iowa in this, because the membership at Homeschool Iowa is cheap. By the way, it's $50 a year for a family, so it's very inexpensive, and that's what allows us to to me, like I get paid enough to cover my expenses, basically driving up to the Capitol and things like that is about what it covers. So I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's not like I'm rolling in a fat salary to do this. I still want to, right? I've got my children intend to homeschool, so I've got a vested interest in this,
in the
and
game.
I'm happy to do it. But a membership at Homeschool Iowa also lets us. It gives us a lot of credibility to have more members. The more members we have, the more credibility we have with legislators. It also lets us purchase things like we have a subscription that we use that is a huge help in digesting these 2,000 bills that get proposed every year. It would be impossible for us to really read and digest all of those bills over the course of a year. It'll be so easy to have something skate by us that we would never see until it potentially even too late. So, tools like that subscription that we use that help us to filter through this giant mass of information. Things like that are really, really critical, and that's what the membership costs. That's what the membership costs goes to help defray things like that subscription, which is not inexpensive. So the best way to stay up on what's going on in Iowa during the legislative session is through a Homeschool Iowa membership, because I do an update every week. Every Friday you get an update, and that has a great deal of detail about the bills I've read, the bills that we're working on, what we're doing internally inside. So you get a lot of insider information about what's going on. I don't have a section in there on what you can be praying for, and I should. That's a really good idea. I'm going to rate that. I'm going to write that now. And really, that's fantastic.
That's the Holy Spirit. I can't take credit for that.
I'll take it. I will take it. That's great. So that's a really good way to stay up to speed is through that membership. So what's going on right now? We don't have any big threats in Iowa, and no big threats to homeschool freedom in Iowa. What I will say is that I think that as the education savings accounts, now we're coming into our 4th year in Iowa with ESAs. Those were that got signed into law in 2023, right? And so the 3rd year of the phase in is happening right now. 2027 will be year number 4. And so that means that everyone will be eligible for an ESA, and so what we're starting to see happen, I think, is that we're starting to see a little bit of a gap widen, and I think you maybe asked me for a more of a tactical answer of what's going on, and I'm jumping into more of the strategic side. We can circle back to the tactical as well, but it's been really interesting to me this year that I'm starting to see that gap increase more and more between what the legislature is doing with ESA schools that are accepting ESA funds. There's a lot more regulation. There's a lot more control, and really, honestly, I think it's, in a way, I don't want to get in trouble. I think in a way it's appropriate, though, because part of government's job is to steward well the resources that the government takes, right? The government takes resources from us, and it's part of its job is to steward those resources well. So the government should have a level of say and should have a level of accountability for the money and how it's spent. No doubt about that whatsoever. But it's becoming more and more clear that even our friends, right, our friendly legislators, those that are very supportive of parental rights and very supportive of homeschooling, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, but there's a growing disconnect, I think, between those folks that like to be able to put their hands on and control things from a legislative standpoint. Even if that's legislating good things, right? They're still adding code, they're still adding laws, they're still adding requirements. And where I think homeschooling really is naturally needs to and wants to go is in the opposite direction, where it's parental responsibility, it's parental rights, it is parents choosing how they educate their kids before God. That's how those decisions are made. And so I'm seeing that as the ESAs become more and more prevalent, and there's more and more money spent in those areas. And I don't want this to come across as being negative towards ESAs or, by the way, education savings accounts in Iowa. Yeah, no, I know you have listeners outside of Iowa though, and so I just realized that because I do speak and interact with the national homeschooling groups as well, and so it's important. So in Iowa, there's education savings accounts, and that is the school choice funding method that's used in Iowa. So when we talk about ESAs, that has this different flavors in different states, but it's the way that the state chooses to fund private schools. To basically money follows the child.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what ESA dollars are. So I think that gap will continue to widen. I think that's going to continue, and I think that is a challenge for us in some ways, because I think that our legislators, our friendly legislators, those that want to support parental freedom and parental rights, I think that those legislators are also accustomed to being able to make rules and to provide some degree of control over those things that are out there. And so like our legislation right now, that I think we still have a really good chance, but I think part of the reason why we're getting some pushback is because what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to say that the government doesn't get to make rules about independent private instruction, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Department of Education doesn't get to make rules. That's the legislature's job, and only the legislature's job. So there are pieces like that where I'm seeing that we're starting to have that gap. So that's the strategy side. On the tactical side, boots on the ground, we're trying to remove some of the restrictions that are currently on home education, and especially specifically on IPI. So right now there's some restrictions in code that you can't have more than 4 unrelated students, right? And there's also a restriction that there can't be any compensation for that. So,
Do you know why that was there to begin with?
it was a concession. So
Okay.
back in 2013, I think that when the current code was written, I think it was a concession that was added to assuage some fears that all of a sudden thousands and thousands of micro schools would pop up all over the state, and the state wouldn't be able to control them. It's not their job, and they're not allowed to control them anyway. But I think that was a concession
Okay.
for those concerns back then. The reality is that it's not enforced, right, because a lot of people send their kids to co-ops and those sorts of things, and so, but it's a liability because an unfriendly legislature or an unfriendly executive branch could take advantage of that. So just trying to fix it before it gets out there.
Yeah.
There's a homeschool sports bill that's out right now.
I didn't know about that.
It's in the Senate. Yep. So there's been a challenge with the Iowa High School Athletic Association. I don't know all the details on that. I know that Senator Pike, Mike Pike, is a homeschool dad, and he's had, I think, all 5 of his kids have been in organized homeschool sports, and they've never been able to scrimmage with even a tiny little, even the smallest public schools, because of rules with the Iowa High School Athletic Association. So anyway, that's Senator Pike's bill, and Homeschool Iowa support. I've been registered in support of it. I've testified in support of it. But that could be an interesting topic just to dive into and figure out what's going on there. But my understanding of it is that the Iowa High School Athletic Association is a 501c3, but they have their charter through the state, and so that's how the legislature would be able to change those rules is by amending the charter with that 501c3. So that's out there. There's a potential refundable tax credit bill that's out there. I don't know that it's going to go anywhere this year. That one's been an interesting one for us to watch, because refundable tax credits are not one that we typically that Homeschool Iowa would typically support, because it's basically a welfare program, because it's refundable. So even if you didn't earn the money, you can still get it back. just a place where Homeschool Iowa has decided to land. It's one of those places where you just have to make a decision about what what works and what's right. I don't think that one's going to go anywhere. The frustrating part with that one is that there's other ways to do it, and we've really worked with Representative Fett is the one that proposed that one, and I've had such good conversations with her, and she's been very open to talking about it and how to amend that. So, and we did get some really good amendments to that bill. I don't know that it's going to go anywhere because it has a fiscal cost assigned to it in the legislature. They call that a fiscal note, and right now with the what they think is going to be a potential budget shortfall. Anything with fiscal notes this year is a little bit of a challenge to get through. Bothers me because I think they're forgetting that where the money comes from, it's all our money in the first place. It's not theirs. But that's how the process works, is that if there's an extra cost to something like this, like a tax credit, then it's going to be that much more difficult to get through when the revenue estimating thinks that we're going to have a budget shortfall this year. So, yeah, that's about it tactically going on right now. So those changes that we wanted to make to the IPI legislation or the IPI code, those changes, that bill died in committee right before the first funnel. But we're working on a couple of other options right now to keep those alive with some other bills and some amendments. So we'll see how that all plays out. We're getting a lot of really good help from leadership in both the House and the Senate. We're getting really good help from Americans for Prosperity and some other groups. So we have a lot of friends, and that's wonderful. But yeah, that's where we're at in Iowa right now. Nationwide, a little bit of a different story. There's a lot of challenges happening right now. In the usual suspects, Illinois, Virginia, those states where they've slid a little left. Typically, those are not so friendly to home education.
Yeah. And you kind of touched on this because those are the current things that are happening. But in Iowa, or you can even say the nation, how would you describe the current climate around education policy, and where does homeschooling fit within that landscape?
What I see nationally around education policy is I see a move towards homeschooling. Right, I think that continues to grow. I heard, like love her or not, I heard Heidi St. John talk about this once, and it really changed my thinking about home education and where we're at right now. She said, the people who were in the 90s home educating before it was legal, in the 80s and 90s before it was legal, they were pioneers. They were running towards something. They were pushing towards the goal of home discipleship, and then once that freedom was won, then there's a lot of people in between there, and we're in that group of we're take advantage of it, but we really, it wasn't we weren't running towards something, we weren't running away from something. It was just it just was where we felt like we were called to do at the time, and it's been a wonderful blessing for us and for our family. But we now have a lot of people who are running away from public schools towards homeschooling. And so what we had the previous generation, the one older than me, were pioneers. And now what we have is refugees. People that are refugees.
Heard it talked about like that before.
It really changed my thinking when she said that. And if you look at the situation, there's a lot of truth. I think there's a lot of truth to that. There are a lot of people that are running away from what they're perceiving, and in my opinion, rightfully so, as significant problems in the public school system. And so that changes the makeup of who's out there and who's in homeschool communities. And I think that in large part what you're seeing home education becoming more and more a part of society, right? You hear about it a lot more people are doing it. And I think there's going to be, if there isn't already, a perception that this needs to be controlled because, frankly, when there was just a few people doing it, it was perceived as fringe weirdos, and it doesn't really matter, right? It's such a small part of the population that we don't really care about it, and honestly, that's better for those of us that want to take it seriously and do that work ourselves. So I think nationally, what we're starting to see more and more a realization that, wait a minute, this is a thing, and this is a thing that's drawing kids out of the public education system. I have my own opinions about the purpose of the public education system in the United States, and those may or may not be particularly popular or helpful right now. So I don't need to get into those. That's, you can spend 5 or 10 hours on YouTube and get all sorts of different opinions about that. But the reality, I think, is that as more and more people choose this option, there are going to be greater and greater attempts at making it at adding regulation and making it less and less free for those of us that are pursuing the freedom of home discipleship the way that we're called to do it. So that's what I see as kind of the overarching theme. There are some particular groups that are really pushing that agenda hard. There are particular groups out there that have model legislation to put all sorts of new regulations and new restrictions on home education. Don't hear me say that the sky is falling either. But I definitely see that as more and more people engage this, and especially as it financially damages public schools, that the rhetoric keeps getting stronger and stronger against allowing home education.
Yeah, I agree with you. I subscribe to, I'm a member of HSLDA, and so I get their quarterly or monthly.
Yep, they get it. Yeah, I think they do a magazine. I can't remember if it's.
Yeah,
I should know. I'm an HSLDA member too.
But yeah, that's really what I'm seeing too, is that it's making more waves in our culture, in our society, and that is attached to our finances too. So and people have so many different ways of thinking about homeschooling, and a lot of them don't really know what it is, what it looks like, how it works, or the benefits of it, of children going through it. And so you have some people who are wanting to make decisions but don't really have all of the facts. And so I think it's really important for those of us who are doing the work at home, who are, we just graduated our son, and he is so thankful that he was homeschooled. And I think if there's more people like us saying something about it, that it would have, that the waves would be a little bit friendlier.
Yeah. I agree. So I think you already asked this question, and that was like, what can you do as a homeschool family to protect your freedom to homeschool? Right.
Yeah.
I will tell anyone who will listen, or anyone who's polite enough to not walk away from me when I'm talking to them, that the absolute best thing that you can do as a homeschool family is get to know your legislator, your state legislator. So this is a principle that is difficult for a lot of people, especially those like I've always been interested in politics, right? I've always been interested in politics. I've followed politics. Get my all dander up about politics over the years and all that stuff. And it took me a long time to realize that the if you really want to change something in politics, start with the people that are closest to you. The people on a national level, right? It's really easy to grab onto that because it's in the news. It's all over the place. It's kind of like a big sport like Super Bowl or whatever, right? It's this thing we like to hang our hat on of like it's the big deal. And so the presidential election is the big deal, and the House and the Senate, the national legislators is the big deal. They get all the attention, but especially in the United States, the vast majority of decisions that affect us directly are made in our county and in our city and at our state level. And the city and the county and the state are all intertwined in Iowa. And so the absolute best thing you can do to protect your freedom to homeschool is to get to know your legislator, and to get to know them well in advance of some sort of a challenge or some sort of a problem that comes down. Because when there is a big controversial piece of legislation, everybody is yelling at your legislator. Everybody's yelling at them from every side. And if you are one of the thousands who are suddenly that they've never met, you're suddenly yelling at them, you have no influence whatsoever. You are just another. Okay, was that person yelling for the thing or against the thing? Really, I mean that's all they can do is start making tally marks, right? And it doesn't really change anything because you're not communicating with them. You're just yelling at them. And I say yelling, but you know what I mean. Like we see these things all the time where sign the petition to stop this or stop that, and that's not really engagement. That's just a tally mark on someone's wall, and they may or may not pay attention to it. But if you have a personal relationship, so this is how bad legislation in Illinois has gotten stopped. This is how bad legislation in West Virginia. No, not West Virginia. Yeah, West Virginia, especially. Which West Virginia is very conservative. You wouldn't think this would happen. Yeah. But in both of those cases, it was homeschool families who had a personal cell phone level relationship with education committee or judiciary committee chairs who once the bill got to the committee, they were like, wait a minute, I know homeschool families. They don't abuse their children. They're not crazy Nazis, right? And that's where the legislation is always based on either a charge of abuse or some other charge where it's deemed necessary that the government needs to pay attention to what's going on inside of people's homes. And so every time that this harmful legislation gets stopped, it's because of homeschool families that have personal relationships with people inside the legislature, and the people inside the legislature are able to take a step back and go, no, this isn't right. This isn't where we need to be. That's how it gets stopped every single time. And forming those relationships is far easier than you think. And it doesn't mean you have to drive to Des Moines. Again, this is my thing. I'll say to anybody who's polite enough to not walk away. And look, you're both polite enough to not walk away.
Well, and that's the big question is like, well, how do I get started? What can I do? Do I have to wait in the lobby of a hotel and offer someone cigars?
No. I mean, if you'd like to talk to me, works every time. Oh, actually, you just email me. That works too. No, but that's a great question. So the best possible way to get started with this is to follow your legislator on Facebook. They all have Facebook pages. That is the way that they disseminate information, and they have to hold regular town hall style meetings in your town. They have to do that. And legislative districts are small enough in Iowa that it's never more than a 30 or 35-minute drive to get to one of these events. And you'll be shocked at the small number of people that actually show up. And in Iowa, whatever you think of your legislator, they have to they have by default, and this is true in most other smaller states. Some of the larger states I think have professional legislators, but the vast majority of the small states in the US, the legislators are basically volunteers, right? I think in Iowa they get $25,000 a year or something like that as pay, and their expenses and everything else comes out of that. So they get some stipend, but it certainly is not anything approaching a full-time job, right? So all of these people, every last one of them that are legislators, they have all said, I'm going to forego 4 months of my business or my pay to work in the legislature. And so when they show up to around here, it's called Eggs and Issues, right? It's held at a breakfast restaurant. But when they show up to one of these things, they're there to talk and they're there to listen. And vast majority of them probably have never met or interacted with a homeschool family. So it's going to be extremely interesting conversation. And they're there to talk. And I've never had it. Even folks in the legislature that I don't agree with, that we know don't agree, we're still all Iowa nice, and we can still have a conversation. And when it comes right down to it, if they're willing to put the effort into running for that office, going and spending the first 3.5, 4 months of the year in Des Moines, it's a pain. And if they're willing to do that, they're going to be willing to talk to you, and they're going to be happy to meet someone who is kind and has a smile on their face and says, "Hey, thank you very much for taking the time to do what you do." And I just want to meet you and say thank you and get to know you. And if you show up on a regular basis and show up in a positive way, they're going to remember you. If you really want to have influence, volunteer for their campaign. Help them. Mm-hmm. That makes a huge difference. And that's, by the way, how you get their cell phone number, is because you're on a text string, and you're helping with their campaign, or you're helping them with something else, right? You're offering them some sort of assistance. There isn't a lot of money in Iowa politics. There's a few of the big guys in the large cities need a lot of money, but most of these campaigns run on $7 or $8 grand, as opposed to the hundreds of millions in national elections. So they're not necessarily after money. They can get their funding, but it's people to do mailers and write postcards. And I wrote postcards for a friend of mine who was running, and it's just it's a few hours, but it makes a difference. Mm-hmm. And 30 or 40 of those postcards, and you get a few people together and do it, and it makes a difference. So those are the absolute best thing that you can do. And the same thing with school board members. Anybody that's in your local government, getting to know them and forming a relationship with them will always pay dividends. Maybe not immediately, but it'll always pay dividends.
That's really
especially
good.
If you're nice.
That's really good advice. I mean, I can also see me bringing my family there too and making it a public service, like a
Yeah.
lesson for our family to learn and say, and for legislators to also meet with homeschool families to say, no, we're living this out, and this is our
Yep.
opportunity to learn more about public service.
Yep.
So I think that's a great um, insights that you provided.
Yes. I'm happy.
Well,
And if you if somebody wants to, I don't know if you can put you can get a hold of me through the Homeschool Iowa website.
yeah, and
Um,
that's what
but
we
if
were going to ask too, is how do we
if
get
in
in touch with you? Or what, we'll
yeah
put that in the show notes too of
yeah
how to get in contact with you through the Homeschool Iowa, and just if any of our audience members has any questions and how to reach out to you.
yep,
Because I mean, like I said from the beginning, when it comes to advocacy and who are going to help us to really get our voice heard, are going to be people like you, Jeremy, who are advocating and who know the issues and know how to get to the right people to help support what we're trying to do with our families. But with that, we appreciate you being on here. And like I said, we'll put in our show notes just your contact information so our audience can reach out to you if they have any questions. But Jeremy, thanks so much. And for everyone, thank you for tuning into this episode. You can always contact us. And in the comments, if you have any recommendations, suggestions, or anything about this upcoming legislation, let us know. We're happy to kind of see what everyone's interested in, and Jeremy will be on the lookout too for the future to see, what out of everything that we've been interested in this upcoming session, what came true? What are things that we didn't see that are happening? Are we getting that NFL stadium? Who knows? So
oh
we're
man, don't get me started.
so yeah. So with that, we thank you for everyone, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.